Hey guys, this video is for Unit 2, Lesson 8. In this video, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about how we can actually modify our player movement to make it smoother and actually work for both players. And finally, we're going to talk about how we can actually modify our colliders in-game to create triggerable objects. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. We're going to get into it. But for now, you want to answer these quick questions on your worksheet. Go to Google Classroom, go to Unit 2, Lesson 8. Go to your worksheet and answer these three quick questions. From there, we will actually go and talk about the actual assignment and the actual questions. What you want to do is pause the video, and in 5 seconds, I'm going to resume with answering these questions. Okay, at this point, I believe you have finished finished answering the questions on your worksheet, and we can actually get into the work right here. So here is the deal. The first question asks us which two components must be added to a game object before it can be moved. Well, that was actually pretty simple. You need a rigid body 2D component and a box color 2D component. If you do not have those two components, your character we won't even be able to start moving our character. If I run the program right here, you will see that the character will fall all the way to the ground. And that is, let me show the proper character fall to the ground. Yeah, the character starts falling to the ground, and that is because I have that component on there. Which rigid body property can be used to add force to a game object? That one's very simple. Just rigid body 2D dot add force. If I were to look at, I think the script is on here. It is not, but I can make another script later on and show you. But if I look at a script, you will see, if I go to a new tab, rigid body 2D, add force. And this add force component will allow us to add force to any game object that we choose. From there, the final question. Which rigid body property can be used to add movement to a game object? That one's simple. We're going to go here, and I'm going to re-add that movement script that we created the last time. So I'm going to go type in movement like that and go into the script. Now, if you're wondering how I just typed in the movement, all I did was I just added a component and just typed in the name of the script there. And then I was able to add that component in. But anyway, if I look at this movement script, you'll see that all I'm doing right here is I'm getting a component, getting the rigid body 2D component, and then I'm accessing the velocity. The velocity is what allows our character to actually move whenever we're programming it. Now, with that being said, let's jump into the agenda. So here's the agenda. We're going to work on polishing our movement inside of Unity, like I said, talk about colliders, and then start programming some triggers. Your homework assignment is you're going to complete Unit 2, Lesson 8. There will be a folder on Google Classroom for you to download, and you can actually start working on the assignment. Now, one thing I do want to note about this lesson is I'm actually going to have you guys work on the same Unity scene that you worked on for the last lesson. So if you go to Unity, you go to Lesson 7, and click on the Pong level scene right here, you will see that the Pong game has been set up for you, and you should have all the same stuff you had last time. If you do not have all the stuff you had last time, maybe you didn't save, but if you did not, that's fine. We're going to go over all the code one more time in a sped up version. So just follow along. All right. Also, one more thing, the challenges itself is going to be in the Unit 2 Lesson 8 folder. So if you double click on this right here, you'll see the two objectives. The first objective is you're going to add a triggerable goal for both players. The second objective is figure out how to keep track of a score, but that's really a bonus. So with that being said, let's actually jump into the lesson. Like I said, today is all about programming triggers. You're going to learn how to do that, and let's continue on with the progress check. So as a reminder, we are making the game of Pong. And by now, you should have been able to do the following. Create movement for your player 1 and player 2 object, and also add force to your Pong ball object. Those are just two things you should have been able to do by now. I'm going to talk about how we can actually polish this movement so that we can actually have one script control both players. Because I'm pretty sure when you guys created the movement for your player 1 and player 2, you made two individual scripts. you don't need that. You can do everything with one script, and I'm going to show you how right now. Actually, not right now. I'm going to teach you one concept and then show you how. So, before we actually get into power channel movement, I want to teach you guys about the power of the dot. Now, you guys have seen this code a couple of times when we created the movement, but I never really went into exactly why it's structured the way it is. So right here we have get component, and whenever you read this, it's literally doing what it says. You're getting the component, you're getting a very specific component. The component we're going to get is the rigid body 2D component. If we go in here, click on this object, and remember, all these things right here in the inspector are different components that we're adding onto the object, and the component we're getting is the rigid body 2D. From there, we're going to access the rigid body 2D component and change the velocity to be something new. Breaking it down again, whenever you're getting a component, the component you're getting is that top level data you're trying to access. From there, we have a dot. What this dot means is, think of it like you're kind of jumping into a pool, right? This rigid body 2D is a big pool, and we're jumping into that pool, and we're getting the velocity component from there. So inside rigid body 2D is velocity. We're getting that, and we're going to change that property. That's what the dot means. When we use the input system, you also see the dot come into play as well. Again, the input system allows you to access various key board and controller inputs by way of what's called key binding, or assigning one key to do something very specific. So let's talk about getting keyboard input. So the first part we do is we have the input, right? Dot get key. The input in this case is like the top level data. Dot get key is the information you're accessing. Likewise, this key code, the key code right here is the top level data. The dot means we're going inside of it, and we're going to access the letter A from there. Rigid body 2D input and key code are all what's called reference data types that can be used that can be stored and accessed as variables inside of Unity. So if you remember when we talked about data type before, we had two different types of data. We had value data types and reference data type. The value data types are the integers, the floats, the booleans, all the basic stuff we're used to. But whenever we get a reference data type, we're getting a reference to something in our Unity project. So as an example, if we were referencing the transform component, we are getting a reference to that specific object's transform, and we're changing information in there. When we're referencing the rigid body 2D component, we are getting a reference to that specific object, rigid body 2D component here, and we're going to get some information from inside of it. All these things can be stored as data, and that we can change and modify inside of Unity. To give you an example, I'm going to show you guys my favorite way of doing this by way of actually creating a variable for the key code. So I'm going to go back to Unity, and here's what I'm going to do. Last time we had a player, and we were able to make him move up and down by using our movement script. I'm going to add that movement script back here, and I'm going to actually go inside of it. So at this point, the script should look a little bit like this. We have our key code W that when I press it, it moves up. When I use key code .s, it moves down. Just to make sure it works, I'm going to run this program. When I press W, he moves up. S, he moves down, like that. Now, if I'm not pressing anything, I want this to be an else statement. So else, and do that. Like that. So if I press W, I move up. Else if I press S, I move down. And if I'm not doing anything, I don't want to move at all. So with that being said, if I press W, move up. If I'm not pressing anything, he stops moving, and if I press S, he moves down on the keyboard. Alright, awesome. So now I'm going to talk about how we can actually make our movement a lot smoother by using key binding. Not key binding, by storing our key code as a variable. So when we talked about variable before, you had to do things like this, where we created the variable, like string my name, and assign that to whatever name you want it to be. And when we did that, we talked about this is how you make a variable, but there are two different types of variables. There are public and private variables. A public variable, if I save this and go back to Unity, you can actually see that variable appear in Unity. But a private variable, you cannot see it all inside of Unity. The reason why I mention this is because I want to actually use public variables to actually change information inside of Unity, so I don't have to keep going back and forth into the code. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to actually get rid of this, and at this point you want to copy this, what I have here, and I'm going to get the key code data type. I'm going to call it up, like that. And remember, I want it to be public, so before I do the key code, I'm going to make it public, like so. So I'm making this public. Key code is the type of data I want to use, and then I'm calling this variable up. The cool thing about it is this. If I go here and I look at what's happening in Unity, you see that I have the variable name up, and right now it's set to none. When you click it, you'll see all this stuff pop up here. And if you notice, we have backspace, delete, tab, clear, all that stuff. These are all examples of keys on the keyboard. And that way, instead of actually typing in the physical key we want in here, we can just use this variable and have the variable pick the key that we want for us. So as an example, instead of typing in key code W right here, we already made a variable for the key code. So I'm just going to get that variable up. From there, I'm going to go back in here. And if I currently run this program, nothing's going to happen. It's not going to move up when I press W. But if I go over here and change it from none and press W on the keyboard here and run the program, when I press W, it moves up. And when I press S, it moves down like it should. The powerful thing about this is that you don't have to always set the specific key you want inside the code. You can easily change the key to whatever you want. As an example, I can change this to be the space button. And now when I run this program, if I press the space button, space allows me to move up and no longer the W allow me to do that. So it's great because you can actually create custom keys in your Unity editor and not have to actually go back to Unity to make all your changes. This saves us a lot of time and it makes our life as a designer and programmer a lot easier. With that being said, you want to make another public variable for the down key. So down, like so. Save it and change it here. Boom. When I run the program, press run. I press space, he moves up. I'm going to change this and I'll make this the D key, no S key. So now if I press S, he moved down. I have an error here. Let's actually unpause it. And let's resync this. If I press S on the keyboard, he should move down. And if I press W on the keyboard, he should move up. Let's run it. Boom, there we go. One thing I realized is that you can't actually change the key while the game is playing, but you can always change it when you pause the game or exit the game and restart it. So the thing I love most about this is not only do I not have to go back into the code and I don't have to keep changing the code by doing like, I don't know, key code dot L, right? I don't have to do that. I can just make it in a variable and have the variable do the work for me. But the other powerful thing is this. I can now, because the variables are not assigned inside the script and we changed the assignment in the Unity editor, I can click on this object right here and give this guy a rigid body and a box collider 2D component. And what I do is I just get that same exact script, add component, type in movement, and I can change this script to do something different. So I can make this one use up and down arrow. And now when I run it, I can move up with W and S, and player 2 moves up with up and down like so. And now we have that one script that can control both the players' movements, which is absolutely perfect. Alright, So that's really it when it comes to the variables part and the key code and polishing out the movement. This movement is really good to go. Now we're going to talk about the next stage of what we're doing for this lesson. We made the variables to sample our code, so now we don't have to keep going back and forth into the code to make a change. Now let's talk about colliders in Unity. So, quick question for you guys. What happens if the pong ball hits the other player's goal? If you guys have played pong before, you know that the player gains some points, right? We do that by using what's called our colliders. Now, you're used to colliders already. We've been using them for a bit. Just as a refresher, a collider is really just determines whether or not an object is solid. If you want an object solid, you use a collider. There are a couple of different types of colliders. And now what I want you guys to do is, as I'm going over this, please take notes on your worksheet on this slide and the next accompanying slides. So the three common types of 2D colliders are box colliders, which create a boundary shaped like a box, circle collider, which creates a boundary shaped like a circle, and a capsule collider, which creates a boundary shaped like a capsule, or think of it like a pill. Now, to quickly review game objects, to review colliders, there is two main properties you change whenever you're using editing the box collider: material and is trigger. The material property adds physics material to an object to enable that object to bounce around the world, right? Where the is trigger allows the object to act as a trigger. We're going to get into the material like pretty soon, not today, but pretty soon. But the is trigger is what we're talking about right now. Now, is trigger, think of it as a kind of like a bubble, right? And if an object touches that bubble, is inside the bubble, or passes the bubble, different things happen. That happens because we make this box collider a trigger. So there's a couple different types of interactions for a trigger. You have the on trigger enter, which says that if the trigger touches another solid object, and then that object enters that current object, it will do one thing. On trigger exit, if an object exits that trigger, it'll do something. And on trigger stay, if an object is inside that trigger, it will do something else. I can give you guys an example of this in a visual sense, but I think it might be easier to show you guys how to do this inside of Unity. So, really quickly, let me just go here. So again, don't forget to take notes on this part right here. And I'm going to show you guys how we can do that inside of Unity by making a basic goal for our player. And we want to make it so a message appears when the goal is hit. So, here's how this works. What I am going to do is I'm going to go up to the top here, and you'll see where it says Game Object. I'm going to click Game Object in the top menu, and I'm going to click Create Empty. And I'm just going to create a very empty game object. I'm going to rename this game object by going over here, and I'm just going to call it P1 Goal, like so. From there, I want to add a box collider to it, and I'll call it make a box collider 2D. One thing you will notice right away is that this object actually doesn't have any, you can't physically see it, right? If I click off, I can't see the object anymore. I can't even click on it. This is an empty object for now, and this empty object is going to act as our goal. If you want to be able to select the object, all you do is just go to your hierarchy, click the object, and select it that way. So, one thing I want to note is some of you guys might not be able to see what your collider looks like. And that might be because your gizmo has been set to off. If you turn it on by going up here and clicking gizmo, you'll be able to see your collider again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this. I'm going to drag this guy over here by pressing W and moving it on the arrow. And then I'm going to press R and then Robert to scale it up and scale it, make it thinner like that. Now I want it to be a trigger object. So what I'm going to do is where it says is trigger, I'm just going to check it on like that. Now, if I go here, I'll see this collider is here, and it has the trigger object on it, and that is perfect. What I'm going to show you guys how to do is I'm going to show you guys how we can actually create a basic interaction and just basically make it so that when the object touches that trigger, it just says hello. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go over here, Unit 2, Lesson 7. I have a script I already made before, but I'm going to delete it. And the first thing you want to do is you want to right-click, create C# script, and I'm going to call it P1 goal. All one word, like that. It seems I have an error here. Let me see where this error is coming from. I have this error here. I'm going to actually delete this. This error only appears on mine. It won't appear on yours. Let me just go here. And search for this object real quick. Okay. I'm going to delete this because we don't need this one. All right. Sorry about that. My game has a lot of extra stuff that you guys don't have, but don't worry about it. Now, continuing on from here, I made the goal. I made a script. I'm going to add that script to this goal right here. I can click it and drag it, or I can just do add component and type in P1 goal, like so. When I'm inside the component, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to start editing this code. Now, as I told you guys before, there are 3 different types of interaction for each trigger. On trigger enter, on trigger exit, and on trigger stay 2D. All these interactions happen inside of its own function. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go back to the code. And after the void update, so after line 17, for example, at the end of void update, I'm going to press enter 2 times. So from right here, what we're going to do is we're going to do void to make a new function on trigger enter 2D, like that. From there, open close curly bracket, and it should automatically fill for you. But if it does not, I will just show you guys really quickly how we can do this from scratch. I'm going to delete this and delete this just so we can get right back to where we just were, like so. If it did not automatically fill for you, the only thing to do after on trigger 2D is you're going to go open parentheses collider 2D space other, or you can do collision, whichever one. Doesn't really matter if it's collision or other. I just like to do other, but we can leave it at collision just because why not. From there, you do open close curly bracket, and inside the curly bracket going to be our code. Now, the way the code can work is we need to check if another object hits this object, it will do something. The way this little function detects if another object hits this object is by way of this right here. Collider 2D. This means it's looking for any object with a collider 2D. When it finds that object, it stores it inside of collision right here. So from here, I'm just going to make a simple if statement, and I'll do if. I'm going to get the name of what's called a parameter that's storing the object. So I'm going to call it collision dot game object. We want to spell game object exactly like this in order for it to work. So if we find another game object with a collider 2D, we're going to do debug.log open parentheses hi and save it. From here, I'm going to go back to Unity, and I'm just going to simply run this program. Like I said, by now you should have had your player 1 moving, your player 2 moving, and your palm ball should also move. So I'm just going to quickly run right here. Make sure all that stuff moves. Looks good. The last thing you want to do is, my palm ball moved really quickly, so I'm actually going to lower the speed a little bit. Just make it 5 again, because I have mine at 50. Just to make sure my palm ball actually moved the way it's supposed to. Okay. If for some reason it stops here, but I'll just put it at 50 again just to make it actually go faster so you can actually see the result. So what's going to happen is when I run this program, the palm ball is going to hit the collider. And when it hits the collider, it's going to display a message hi. You will see this message appear on the console right here. Run the program. The palm ball hit it over here. You kind of saw it kind of went off the screen, but it hit it. And you'll see right here, if I click on this, the message hi appeared. That's really it. We just want to make sure it says hi at least once when another object hits that collider. Again, the two really main ingredients to making this work is as follows. One, whatever object you want your collider to be a trigger for, you need to tick is trigger on. Second thing you need to do is in this code, you want to go, let me find it right here, and you get the on trigger into 2D. If another object touches it, we say a message. That's really it. But those are the two ingredients to making it work. What I want you guys to do is I want you guys to make another empty game object, put it on the left-hand side, and create another script for the player 2 goal, and just make another message appear if another object hits that goal. That's really it. Again, for your homework, you're going to go in Google Classroom. Let me show you guys real quick. Unit 2, Lesson 8. You'll download this Unity package right here. When you do, and go back and import it into Unity, you will see this little message appear here. And again, the goal, make a trigger will go for each player, which means make a goal for player 1 and player 2. That's really it. As a bonus, if you can figure out how to keep track of the score, that'd be awesome. But if you don't got it, that's fine. We're going to get into it in the next lesson. Alright, with that being said, that's all I have for you guys, and I'll see you later.